Hi, welcome back to Joe Blogs. In today's episode, I want to talk to you about what's happening in the economy in Turkey. But before we do that, I want a quick point of order because I've had a lot of messages over the past few months from people saying, stop referring to it as Turkey, it should be referred to as Turkiya. Well, Turkey did change its name to Turkiya in 2021, officially through the United Nations. However, the official advice from the US Department of State says the official conventional long-form and short-form names remain Republic of Turkey and Turkey, respectively. Republic of Turkiya should be used in formal and diplomatic contexts. And the official advice from the UK government says that the country name in English remains as Turkey and that the Turkish pronunciation is Turkiya. So in the same way that I don't refer to China as Zhonghua, or Germany as Deutschland, or France as France, I'm not going to refer to Turkey as Turkiya. So please don't send me any more messages on that matter because it's just wasting everybody's time. Now, before we go on any further today, I want to talk to you about the importance of skincare, which I've become a lot more aware about since I've been appearing on video every single day for the last few years. And for today's video, I've partnered with Geology, which is a 36-time award-winning skincare brand, recognised by publications such as Men's Health and Esquire. Now, if you're like me, you probably don't know where to start in terms of what skincare routine you need. But Geology have a fantastic 60-second quiz that you fill out, and they provide a customised package to meet your needs. And once you've filled out that quiz and placed your order, you'll get a personalised package from Geology, which has everything that you need in it to do your daily routine. One of the things that I identified were dark lines under my eyes, and so this anti-aging cream, which you apply once a day at night under each eye, really does help to sort out those problems. So if you've been thinking about sorting out your skincare regime, now's the time to do it. And the great news is that you can grab a 70% discount off the Geology skincare trial set by scanning the QR code on the screen now or clicking in the link in the description below. And there's also a further 50% discount off add-ons. So what are you waiting for? This chart shows the official rate of inflation for Turkey over the past 12 months. And what you can see here is a game of two halves. In the period between December 23 and May 24, inflation was increasing in every single month and hit a high of 75.5%. However, since May 24, we have seen a steady reduction in inflation, and the latest figures published for December 24 show that inflation is now down to 44.4%. And whilst that does represent some progress, and things are certainly moving in the right direction, an official inflation rate of 44.4% means that Turkey has the second highest level out of every single country in the G20. In fact, the only country that has a higher rate is Argentina, where it's sitting at more than 166% at the moment. That is completely off the scale. And if we have a look at the global comparison, Turkey currently has the fifth highest rate out of every country in the world. It's currently got a higher rate of inflation than Iran, Cuba, Haiti, Egypt, and Venezuela. And that really puts into perspective just how serious the problem in Turkey remains. This chart shows the month-on-month movement in inflation, so basically looking at how much prices have moved compared to this time last month. And what we can see here is that over the past 12 months, there has been a clear improvement in Turkey. In January 2024, the month-on-month movement in prices was 6.7%. And when you annualise that, if you multiplied that by 12, that would give you inflation of more than 70%, which is exactly what we've just seen from the annual data. However, over the past 12 months, there has been a gradual reduction in the month-on-month movements in prices, and the most recent figures published for December show that month-on-month prices only increased by just over 1%. And if you annualise that figure, that would give Turkey an inflation rate of around 12%, which is obviously significantly better than the current level of 44%. Now, whether or not Turkey can maintain this improvement in month-on-month inflation remains to be seen. However, it does show that there are some signs of encouragement. If Turkey can remain on this path and get the annual rate of inflation down, then that's going to be beneficial for the economy. This chart shows the annual rate of food inflation in Turkey, which is a metric that I always like to look at because food inflation is important as the poorest members of society spend a much larger percentage of their weekly and monthly budgets on food. So when food prices are increasing rapidly, it causes more problems for those poorer members of society. And once again here we can see a game of two halves. In the period between January and June 2024, food inflation was running at extremely high levels of around 70%. However, over the past 6 months, there's been a significant improvement, and the latest figures published for December show that food inflation is now running at 43.6%, which is actually lower than the official rate of inflation. However, once again, this isn't really cause for celebration because if we look at the rest of the G20, only Argentina has a higher level of food price increases at the moment, around 150%, and the next highest level is Russia, which is running at around 10%. And if we compare Turkey to the rest of the world, it currently has the fourth highest rate of food inflation. The only countries where food prices are increasing faster are Argentina, which is in a state of economic collapse at the moment, South Sudan, which is a war-torn country, and Zimbabwe, whose economy collapsed many years ago. If you follow the channel, you'll be aware that in the period up to his re-election last summer, President Erdogan was operating a contrarian policy with regards to interest rates. So, despite the fact that inflation was running at really high levels, Turkey repeatedly lowered interest rates, which is the opposite of what traditional theory tells you to do. If you've got high levels of inflation, the theory says you should increase interest rates because that makes borrowing more expensive. It also makes it more attractive to put money into the bank, therefore you're not spending it. And as you do that, then prices should start to come down, and so you can ultimately start to lower interest rates. However, following his re-election in the summer of 2023, President Erdogan changed his policy and started following a more traditional method. So interest rates started to go up in Turkey to combat the high levels of inflation. And you can see from this chart, which shows interest rates over the past 3 years, that between June 23 and March 24, interest rates were increased on 9 separate occasions, from the original level of 8.5% to 50%. Now, as we've just seen from the inflation data, inflation has started to come down over the past 6 months. And as a direct result of that, on the 26th of December, Turkey reduced its official rate from 50% to 47.5%. And the Turkish central bank has said that it intends to continue reducing rates as long as inflation continues falling. And that potentially represents good news for the Turkish economy over the longer term, as reduced cost of borrowing will make it more attractive for companies to take on debt and therefore invest into their businesses and hopefully start to grow. Now, one of the major challenges that Turkey faces is that it's a net importer. It pays more for its imports than it earns for its exports. And as a result of that, it has a negative balance of trade. This chart shows the movement in the balance of trade, which is basically the difference between the value of all of your exports and the cost of all of your imports over the past 12 months. And the scale on the right-hand side of this chart is shown in billions of US dollars and goes from zero at the top to minus $10 billion at the bottom. And what you can see from this chart is that over the past 12 months, the balance of trade has been negative in every single month. And over the past 3 months, the deficit has been increasing. In September 24, it was sitting at $5.1 billion. That figure increased to $5.9 billion in October, $7.5 billion in November, and the most recent figures for December 24 show that the deficit is now sitting at $8.8 billion. And an increasing deficit is obviously bad news for Turkey because Turkey has to fund all of that expenditure, and that has to come from its central reserves. This chart shows the exchange rate between the US dollar and the Turkish lira over the past 12 months. And what this shows is that over the last year, there has been a consistent and steady decline in the value of the lira. This time 12 months ago, $1 US was trading for around 30 Turkish lira. Today, it's trading for more than 35.4, which represents a fall in value of over 18% over the last 12 months. And if we expand the scale of the chart to show what's been happening over the past 5 years, you can see that the problem with the lira has been a long-standing issue for Turkey. And 5 years ago, $1 US was trading for 5.8 Turkish lira. So over the last 5 years, the value of the lira has fallen by more than 500%. And the reason that this represents a significant problem for Turkey is that it's a net importer. It's having to buy in more things than it's selling, and therefore it's having to pay for all of those things in the international markets in various currencies. And as the value of the lira falls, it makes all of those goods relatively more expensive in Turkey. And that's one of the things that's driving up inflation. This chart shows the annual growth rate for GDP in Turkey over the past 3 years. And what this shows is that in the last quarter of 2023 and the first quarter of 2024, Turkey achieved a growth rate of 1.2%. However, unfortunately, over the past 2 quarters, Turkey has seen a contraction in GDP of 0.2%. And the official definition of a recession is when a country reports 2 consecutive quarters of falling GDP. So officially, Turkey is now in recession. And that's obviously a problem from Turkey's perspective because it means that the economy is contracting. Companies within Turkey are earning less money now than they were historically, and that's going to make it more difficult for Turkey to be able to trade its way out of its current situation because it's a manufacturing economy. It needs its businesses to be doing well. It needs to be making things and exporting those goods all around the world in order to get in more income and grow the economy. So the fact that they're now in recession is going to make it more challenging to be able to bring down inflation and interest rates and reduce the balance of trade deficit. So what's the summary and conclusion today? Well, I wanted to post this video because we've been following the situation in Turkey for more than 3 years. And what we've seen from today's data is that there are some signs of encouragement. Inflation has been coming down over the past 6 months and currently is sitting at the lowest level at any point in the last 12 months from Turkey's perspective. So that's obviously good news. And when you look at what's happening with the month-on-month movement, the current figure is the lowest that's been seen for 12 months as well. And if you annualise the current figure, it would give Turkey an inflation rate of around 12%, which I think everybody in Turkey would be delighted about. However, it isn't really time for celebration just yet because when you look at the absolute levels, when you look at inflation running at more than 43%, it means that Turkey is still ranked as one of the top 5 countries in the world in terms of inflation. And the same applies to food inflation. It's been coming down over the past 6 months, but Turkey still has one of the highest rate of food price increases out of every country in the world. And its interest rates, while they have come down slightly in December, they're still sitting at more than 47%. And obviously 47% is an extremely high rate of interest. Nobody wants to borrow money if you're having to pay back 47% interest every single year. And as a result of those factors, and also the fact that Turkey is a net importer, its balance of trade is falling, it's getting bigger, the deficit. And all of that means that the lira is continuing to fall in value. And this does become quite a vicious circle because if the value of your currency continues to fall, it means that your purchasing power in the international markets is becoming less. Things are relatively more expensive if you're importing them from other countries. Those additional costs therefore drive up inflation, which means that you have to keep interest rates high. And all of this means that a lot of people in Turkey are still reluctant to use the lira. There's a high level of dollarization in the country. A lot of people are preferring to use the US dollar or the euro rather than the Turkish lira. And that makes it more difficult for the Turkish central bank to be able to get the economy back under control. So the overall summary of today's video is that we're starting to see some signs of encouragement. Things are moving in the right direction in Turkey. However, it's a very long journey that the Turkish economy has to move along. It's still in a state of crisis. Inflation and interest rates are still at extremely high levels. The balance of trade is at a deficit and it's increasing. So that's costing the Turkish central bank even more money to be able to keep funding that. And it needs to make some major steps forward in 2025 if the economy is going to get anywhere near a normalised level of trading. And I'll keep you posted as soon as there's any further news and developments. But hopefully you've enjoyed today's video, you found it useful, informative and thought-provoking. If you've liked what I've said, then please give me a thumbs up. Thank you for watching this video all the way through to the end, and here's something to put a smile on your face.